Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Justin the Food Entrepreneur Show. I'm Justin Bizzarro. I'm your host. That's Bizzarro. For anyone who's out there, you can find us on Instagram at Justin the Food Entrepreneurs. You can find me personally on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Generally, I'm mostly on Instagram, guys. I do use LinkedIn more and more just because of being a business person. So I appreciate everyone who's started to follow us there. Information on Gorilla Brave, again, LinkedIn, Instagram, and there's the blogs out there for everyone for that educational space, podcasts, transcripts, all of that's on there. iTunes, Podbean, you can get it on there. Guys, as we start experimenting with video, straight to YouTube, releasing video through the podcast itself, you'll see some of we're going to do some testing there for that as well. So everyone, I appreciate your patience. We are growing in that way and trying to handle it. And we are recording multiple podcasts a day to keep up with trying to do at least 3 to 4 a week based on our podcast schedule. So the education's there, guys. The Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn's there as additional levels of education, what I'll call low-hanging fruit. And then the blogs get in deeper. And then you'll start to see the other things that all came from you guys, the audience. That all came from, as 6 years we did this, we realized our audience was food entrepreneurs, beverage entrepreneurs, hospitality entrepreneurs all over the world, farmers, fishermen. And when we asked everyone 3 years ago what it was they wanted the most, it was the education in a rapidly changing world in a continuous form. So that's what's out there for you guys. So with that being said, I have our guests. How are you doing today, Aaron Vaccaro?
I'm doing. Thanks for having me, Justin.
Yeah, no worries. From Sacramento, California, Liquor Lab CEO, guys. The company's based out of Nashville, Tennessee. We talk a lot about Nashville. I have greatest audience, I would say, in the U.S. is out of the Nashville area, probably because there is a lot of food and beverage entrepreneurs being grown in that space. You're also the vice president at WestRiver Group. So I want to highlight that as well. But I'm going to let you have the microphone, Aaron. This is your show. I'm just a vehicle to tell it. Let's talk about your journey from little Aaron to where you are now as an investor, as a CEO, as a businessman. What does that look like in your life? It's yours.
Yeah. Well, I'd say my primary kind of role for the last 10 years has been at the WestRiver Group as an investor. We're a venture capital firm, but we have a primary focus we do a lot of experiential entertainment, which ends up including a lot of hospitality and food and beverage. And now that's evolved a bit into being an operator myself and getting involved in running and building some of our companies. And my background started wanting to go into finance and be an investor. And I just kind of, through luck, found my way into this particular firm and role in the early days when we were getting going, building a company called Topgolf. And as that took off, we really grew and got involved in a lot of other stuff. And so it's been a fun journey.
Talk to me about the seed a little bit. What's that look like? What is the sort of the thing that rooted in you that led you on this? Why this journey? Why entrepreneurship? Why business in general? For you personally?
Yeah. I grew up in a household that was pseudo-entrepreneurial. My dad started a business as a financial advisor when he was, I guess, younger than me, but that's kind of what I grew up with, a small business family. But interestingly, outside of just that, my parents always were really encouraged me to be entrepreneurial and to try things. So like my first business was at age 7. I started a business called Aaron's Errands, where I just did errands for, my neighbors, which was a lot of like cleaning and running around doing stuff. And then in high school, I started a couple businesses. One, Poor Boy Wood Company, selling firewood that I would cut down and cut on my property and then go deliver and stack for people. And then I did a car detailing business. So I always had an entrepreneurial kind of bone in my body. But when I went off to college, I wanted to do science and I was really good at math. And so I actually went off to study physics at university. And I did that for a year. And then after sleeping through my first physics midterm and hating my labs, I switched to computer science and engineering for a couple of years. And then ultimately, by the end of college, it was like finally had to recognize, my true nature, because I had started a business on campus selling birthday cakes to college kids really selling to their parents, baking and selling birthday cakes to college kids that were far away from home. And then I also co-founded the student investment club at the university. And so all of my time and my passion was in business and investing. And yet my classes, I was still taking math and computer science. And it was like, I got to senior year and it's like, okay, it's time to be honest with myself. Like, I don't really want to be an engineer. I really want to be a business person, an entrepreneur. So I had just enough time to switch my major to just math and graduate in 4 years still. And then I ended up going to grad school for a year to get a master's in finance, because at that point, that was going to be the best way into a career in investing. So it was kind of a roundabout journey, but it was a good lesson about being honest with myself, like who I really was and what I wanted to do. And the relief that came with that of recognizing, one, just because you're good at math doesn't mean you have to be an entrepreneur, it doesn't mean you have to be an engineer. And secondly, the relief of sort of reconciling, your real interest in where your heart really is versus where you think it's supposed to be. And the weight that lifted off of me at that time was huge. So that's how
I want to anchor this big time too. I think a lot of it was similar for me in some different ways. Like a lot of good schooling, definitely had the opportunity, good teachers, good schools. But math only made sense to me when it was in business. Was I good at math in general? Yeah, and could I do it? Yeah, but when it made sense, when I could extrapolate it from just I'm doing a problem to get an A in class, which wasn't hard, to actually doing something with it is when it became interesting for me. Honestly, statistics in particular, I didn't overly enjoy it in high school, but then as I became an entrepreneur, a greater entrepreneur, I'll say 18, 19, similar stories. Some mine was lawn mowing at 7 and then mowing fields and stuff. I grew up on a farm. So my parents taught me being an entrepreneur and renting equipment and lawn mowers and tractors and stuff. Definitely benefited from that for sure, comparatively. Let's talk a little bit about the journey of investing, how to get into it, how you get your foot in the door as you get a master's in finance and continue in this journey as a business human.
I like that, business human. So I thought I wanted to go to Wall Street. I'd been running this student investment club, and I also, I went to a small, like a private school in Spokane, Washington called Whitworth University, which is a great school. I swam Division III and I had a great time, but it's a small, like private Christian college, and it didn't have a lot of connections to Wall Street or to to high finance. And so I worked really hard to network, and I did get lucky and got an internship with Goldman Sachs one summer where I learned a ton, but that didn't turn into a full-time job. And so it was kind of back to the drawing board. Okay, how am I going to get from this school in North Spokane to New York or San Francisco or somewhere? Because I thought I wanted to go work at one of the big investment banks to start off my career. And so I got into grad school at Claremont McKenna, which was great because it was kind of like trade school for finance. It was a year of just intensive finance classes and investing classes, but it also had this great network of alumni that were actually all over business and finance. And so I did that for a year. And the summer before I went to grad school, I had met, just through a connection at my college on the board, this guy named Eric Anderson in Seattle who had this investment firm. It was like 3 people at the time. And he basically brought me on as a summer intern just as a favor. And so spent the summer kind of doing some research projects, and he had just invested in this company called Topgolf, which was kind of this up and coming thing. So I was like, oh, let's do some projects like how does weather affect Topgolf sales and what are the best markets for us to go to and things like that. And then I went off to school and he was like, okay, basically like good luck and have a nice life. And I was back to the drawing board on applying for jobs. And then about halfway through the year, as I'm doing final interviews for, Morgan Stanley and different places, he called me back and says, hey, I'm actually going to take over Topgolf as CEO. And I need a guy to kind of, I need like a right hand to run around and with me and crunch numbers and help, be a chief of staff, basically an analyst. And so if you want to come back, I actually have a job for you. And so then it was a decision of like, okay, do I want to go to Wall Street and go to one of these big firms? Or do I want to take a chance on, at the time, what was a tiny firm and a potentially really interesting learning opportunity? And frankly, I thought it was going to be less working hours too, because it was a smaller shop and I figured I'd have a better quality of life, which I was very wrong. Not on quality, but on balance, I guess. So I went for it. And as soon as I finished, 2 weeks later, I was in Seattle and jumped in. And basically for the next, especially the next 2 years, but really it was like the next 6 years, we just worked our butts off on growing Topgolf. When I started, we had 11 locations and about 90 million in revenue. And ultimately we sold it in 2021. We had about, 70 locations and like 1.1 billion in revenue. And it was really fun. I learned a ton, obviously. And along the way, I've never had any reason to go anywhere else or move, because I've gotten to take on increasing responsibility and learning opportunities and, see a lot of really, really fun, interesting things. Venture capital ended up being a great fit for me, much more than Wall Street finance, because it's so entrepreneurial. And, like I said earlier, I've always had kind of this entrepreneurial starting businesses and ideas kind of based interest. And with VC, it's like you get this very privileged seat where you both get to be an investor and you get a stable job in a firm, but you also kind of get to play entrepreneur and work with founders and building these companies. And I try to keep that in mind. It's a very good seat, and it's a privilege to have, because I don't have all the same stresses always that the founder does. But I certainly can try to relate and work next to them as hard as they can to help out.
Let's anchor this a little bit, because I think it's good for the audience from an investment standpoint. Let the experience, like you're building businesses, you're driving value in them. You're also leading them from a team-based standpoint. You're sometimes doing change management, for lack of a better term. Talk to me a little bit about that. What does that look like for you? When you're coming in, you're coming in as a CEO, let's say, from a venture capital or a vice president. You're investing in these companies, but with that investment comes change, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about that. A lot of people have trouble with that, right? Not on your side, but on the other side.
Yeah, no, it's true. And honestly, investors and venture capitalists in particular sometimes get a bad rap for wanting to come in and think they know what they're doing and try to make change in things. I mean, I would say we are a little bit unique relative to a normal VC fund, because we don't have, it's just, we're not the same structure as a traditional fund that's making 20 or 30 investments per fund. We tend to do much fewer things at a time, but we go deep and we get really, involved. I also think that we're just good, like we're easy to work with and we're good partners, right? And so I think if you asked all of at least the founders and teams that I work with, it's like we're there to invest in and support their vision, not change their vision, and provide the support that we can, whether that's, usually starts, with financial support, but also ends up being network and coaching. And sometimes it's just having someone to talk to. When you're in the founder or the CEO seat, it's a lonely place, because it's really stressful and you've got to think about making payroll and hiring and firing and growing your business. And you can't talk to your team about all those things. And sometimes, your partner is, your wife or husband is sick of hearing about it, and maybe your friends don't understand. And so part of my job is just being an ear and a shoulder sometimes. And there's also this.
Go on.
Another difference is the repetitions, right? A lot of people we invest in is their first time building a business or founding something. And I've had the experience now of going through either helping start or grow, tens of businesses, not hundreds, but certainly in the double digits. And so it's also just things like, hey, I've been through this before 5 or 7 times, and I can help you on best practices or, something you haven't been through before, right? And so that's the other advantage of getting to see across a portfolio of different businesses rather than just one, is I can bring those experiences to them.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna comment on this too, because I think it is important just from my own experience building multiple subsidiaries and businesses and investors, and things can go right and wrong for sure in life. So it's important that as entrepreneurs we understand this. But I do agree with something that's very important here. I think a lot of this is, okay, I'm giving up ownership for money and when I built something. And so, yes, there's money that comes in, can help for growth. That one's the obvious. But I think more often than not, took me a while to understand this is the bigger your business grows, the greater you get in terms of revenue. I mean, and profitability and generating what I would call buying power in whatever field you're going to do, the greater you are. But around you, the less individuals understand you. There's, okay, you're in the millions, there's a lot. Tens of millions, okay, in food, there's a lot. Okay, hundreds of millions, less. You start pushing revenue of $1 billion, you're pretty alone. Okay, and what do I mean? What do I mean is that it's very hard to go back to be with entrepreneurs that are where you were. It's not that you can't lead them or guide them or coach them. However, if you're in the driver's seat, you have to be evolving, especially at that level, so much in all you are as a human. A renaissance, that doesn't mean one human builds $1 billion business. That's not what I'm saying, guys. But what I am saying is in the driver's seat and trying to reign legitimate, you usually are diversified in your offerings. You probably have subsidiaries. You probably have verticals that you turned into horizontals. And there's things like that. And doing that as an entrepreneur, you have to stay relevant. Well, that takes surrounding yourself by those who also remain at that high level of thinking, that understand that the workday is often 2 work days, if not 3, plus a day with your family, and somehow you're squeezing in 3 days to everyone else's 1, if not 4. And the efficiency of time. When someone wants to talk about the television or the news, generally you don't have an idea unless it's about financial. Okay. I'm just saying, I generally, unless it impacts food or the bank accounts or trade, the energy that I would spend on a television show or a comedy show or a movie doesn't get me anywhere. So what am I saying? It's not that I don't appreciate everyone when I'm in those positions. It's just that I feel like I'm even more alone because I just don't live that life. And then on top of it, what I need in the free time that I have is someone to talk to that can help me work my way through the situation, ask me questions about things, help me come to my own solutions in some ways, because I know my business probably better than anyone. But at the same time, I don't have anyone to ground me through questions. So I think that's vital. So is it worth it, guys? Yeah, you either don't grow, you're leaving money on the table. You're either paying money then to crazy situations, your personal life, your relationship life, your business life, you're making decisions. Maybe you wouldn't even normally make the decisions, but eventually as you grow, the likelihood that you're thinking all of your decisions all the way through or having someone ground you as you get to the top are less and less, especially as an individual.
Yeah, 100%. I actually, one point you made there, it's like, I often find, I mean, it's true. Nobody is going to know as much about your business as you are, right? And that's always going to be the case. But some of the challenge of that is for the leader, for the founder, like every little thing is important and relevant about the company. And sometimes all they need is help sort of distilling the communication of like, how do we actually communicate to investors or to customers, like what's actually important? And it takes a little bit of sometimes an outside perspective on that can be helpful, right?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think entrepreneurs, we often grow and we build these things and they grow fast, but it often helps having someone come in and organize it in a way that we didn't or couldn't or didn't have time for, or that has the ability to do so in some cases. A lot of cases, we're so worried about generating more, taking care of the flock more, that we don't build all the infrastructure properly. I think that's generally just any restaurant or anytime I've bought a business or acquired one, the same thing. It's what generally all it needs to be efficient or better. The first thing is just organization, putting things into places. Sometimes I swear to you, I've been in restaurants and there's like 7 of them and they're a chain and they don't have any actual recipes measured out properly or in a costing system. They know they're profiting, they know it's working, but they don't know why. And it's a really weird thing to see. Like it's a lot of faith to someone that relies on numbers because it gives me anxiety just thinking about it. But I started off in cost analysis in hospitals where you're doing mass amounts of volumes, the pennies mattered. So
yeah, it's interesting. One of the ways that we help is we have a system. It's almost like a philosophy, business philosophy, but a system called model thinking. And it basically helps put everything into a model of some sort, and not just like a financial spreadsheet, but it's putting everything into one understandable terms. And so making sure that for every part of your business, you're speaking the same language as your teammates, as your vendors, your customers, your board members, so that you actually all know that you're talking about the same thing when you say cost of goods or when you say, overhead or alcohol cost or something. And then secondly, it's identifying what are the actual unknowns. Like where are the places that we don't understand something about our business, and where do we understand? And then, there are always going to be certain things that are unknowable, and that's okay. And there's always going to be things that have embedded volatility, right? Seasonality, volatility, all those things. One of the great myths in business, or especially when you're pitching, when people are pitching for investors, is it's completely unreasonable to think you're going to have all the answers and know everything, right? But it takes humility to say, I don't know that. Like either I don't really know what that should cost, or I don't really know what the impact of that thing is going to be. But it's reality, right? None of us actually know everything. And so it's much more powerful to identify what are the unknowns and knowns about our business. And then you can actually work on, okay, well, how could we learn about that? Or how could we build a system to control and make sure that we are ready for whatever those permanent unknowns are going to be. And then it's almost like applying the scientific method to business. Is once you actually understand all the variables in your business, then you can test things and say, okay, well, now we know these are the 5 most important costs. Like, what happens if we change this one, or what happens if we do more of that? And then, but otherwise, it's like you were saying, you're kind of just experimenting in the dark, not collecting any real good data if you don't have a handle on what all those things are to begin with.
Agreed. Let's talk about how this leads into this journey. We're talking about Topgolf. There was a sale you've stayed in. There's other projects we've talked about a little bit beforehand, as well as you mentioned to me the Tailspin Reality Labs, Listening Room Cafe, One Hope, Toca Football. These are all topics I want to touch upon, and then really dive into what it is Liquor Lab is doing and what you guys are accomplishing there as well.
Yeah, where do you want to start?
Well, you do multiple investments. Let's talk about that as in sort of a VC / an oversight role. Talk to me about how you personally decide whether or not you want to be involved in a project beyond financially.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Well, obviously financial is a big part of the equation because we, our job is managing capital on behalf of a number of, it's not a big number, but a number of families and foundations that we work with to invest part of their portfolio into these, a little bit higher risk, but higher return ventures relative to just investing in the public markets or something. And so they're looking for a specific return. We look for things that we think could be a 3 or a 5x or potentially 10x if they're really successful. On the hospitality side is interesting because growth requires capital to build things, right? Building out restaurants and building buildings and things. The venture capital model doesn't apply as well to brick and mortar as it does to like software. companies, which is where, technology is really where the VC model matured. And so in general, I think you need to expect lower returns investing in hospitality businesses versus investing in an AI company now or something. And that's the first thing to kind of to set your expectations on. But, from there, we look for things that have some sort of, scalability. Like we don't want to just do one and done, like something that can grow and be a hit for some reason. But I would say in particular, the niche kind of investment strategy that we have developed over the years, kind of starting with Topgolf, but now applied to other things, is at the highest level, it's investing in what we call the enduring and the inevitable. And so inevitable is basically looking at where the world is going and what technology is inevitable, and investing in things that we think like it's just a matter of time before this becomes possible or this becomes a need or a reality. And that's more on the technology side. So focusing on the enduring as a contrast to the inevitable, and the enduring things are what we believe, regardless of how fast or how much the world changes, they're still going to be part of our culture. And that's things like food and drinks and sports, art, music, all of those, no matter how much AI takes over, like people are still going to need to eat and drink and have human connection and enjoy life. And where we can bring a unique insight or a twist on that is, and my focus is taking things that I think are enduring but are aspirational and making them more accessible and democratized. So for example, I've talked about this before with Topgolf. It was taking something in golf that was enduring. It's been around for, hundreds of years, and it is aspirational, right? People want to learn how to play golf, but there's barriers to entry when it comes to learning how to play, getting a tee time, joining a club, getting expensive equipment. There's all these things that golf is not like the most accessible sport in the world. And so with Topgolf, we just broke down those barriers and said, just come as you are, show up to Topgolf. We've got everything laid out in front of you so you can just step up and just start hitting balls and learning how to swing a club. And it's a low pressure environment. You don't have to wear funny clothes. You don't have to be perfectly on time for your tee time. You don't have to be paired with people that are 10 times your skill level. And it was just, it wasn't replacing golf. It was building on top of golf, on all the success that came before, and just helping open up and democratize the game for more people to be introduced to it. And using technology to put a spin on the game and make it possible. So that was kind of that big thesis that really worked. And now what we've done is apply that to other industries as well, right? So you mentioned Toca. We have, Toca Football is a soccer company where we invested in this technology that was it's like a tennis ball machine, but for soccer. It's developed by Eddie Lewis, who's a good friend and an amazing, men's national team soccer player. And he developed this machine to help you train.
I think my sister had one of these machines. She was a goalie.
Yeah, I mean it's awesome. It's like a tennis ball machine, but it's specifically for soccer balls. And so if that's a longer story, but basically where they are now is using this technology to do two types of business. One is soccer training centers, and so you can go in and it's like renting a batting cage for soccer, where you're training on the machine with all these smart cameras and smart goals and smart workouts.
Oh, I like this a lot.
Yeah, it's really cool, and we see incredible improvement in skills, in particular the first touch and foot skills. The other thing we've done is we've created Toca Social, which is like a sports bar kind of concept, but it has these cages, these Toca soccer game cages, sort of like a like a Topgolf or like a bowling alley, where you go and you rent by the hour and you can order drinks and food and everything, and you jump into the cage and you play these soccer games where you're kicking the ball. Their balls are getting launched at you, and you're getting to play. So that's a fun experience that we're bringing more people into learning how to kick a ball and either develop your skills or first get introduced to soccer. And that business is now scaling. We've got soccer centers across the country. We're opening now the Toca Social across the UK, as well as coming to the US. And soccer is, like the biggest sport in the world. And so that's going to be that'll be a big business.
Well, I like this because the pickleball thing in the United States and the bars and the restaurants that are sort of coming around what I'll call these pickleball social clubs.
Yeah. Yep.
It's unbelievable. I mean, there's a huge one just built in Nashville. I can't believe the size of it. And they're building one here in Denver, I believe, also. So, I
It's
mean,
I can tell you, I couldn't tell you the number of times we've been pitched on investing in, top golf, pickleball, top golf or pickleball. Like there's a lot of them out there.
there's a lot of them. Let's talk about Liquor Lab specifically now. This thing comes across your desk. Let's talk about it from an investment standpoint. Let's talk about it from a customer standpoint. Let's talk about it now and also from a CEO standpoint, because I think those are all different hats that we understand as entrepreneurs. We all wear different hats. I think when we come in from a VC standpoint or an angel investor or investor, and we take a role as a board member or a greater role in leadership, it's often like entrepreneurial. It may not be directly the entrepreneur, but there is a lot of aspects that are similar. So that's why I want to anchor these three different hats, sort of. So let's talk about it from an investment standpoint, a customer standpoint, and then from a CEO standpoint.
Yeah, love it. So from the investor standpoint, this is one of those rare instances where we got a cold email showed up through the WestRiver website. We get a lot of these every day. Like I'm assuming most investment firms get these pitches that come through the website, and it's like, hey, I've got this concept. I'm looking for investors, and we don't have time to talk to all of them, right? But we respond to some and we talk to some, and this is one case where we got this message, and it was interesting enough that I took the meeting, and eventually we ultimately invested. But the pitch was basically, the spirits industry spends a huge amount of money on marketing and advertising, and it's in billboards and sample girls at liquor stores and pop-ups, and not much of it is particularly effective, at least in terms of like the modern experiential marketing and engagement. And so the idea was, why don't we actually put the product into the hands of consumers and teach them how to use it? Because if you're selling products, from off the shelf, not to restaurants, but if you're selling direct to consumer, the reason they're buying it oftentimes is, they're going to go home and make drinks. And so he created this concept called Liquor Laboratory, which started as a pop-up in Chicago, and ultimately, we helped them open the first one in New York, which was, let's do classes teaching consumers actually how to make cocktails. And it would be sponsored by liquor brands, and they would provide the product and things. And there was a financial model there where it was a win-win, because customers are learning how to make drinks and having this really fun experience. And then these liquor brands are getting to put product into the hands of consumers and actually, learn how to make an old fashioned, learn how to make a Manhattan, whatever these drinks are, with the bottle sitting in front of them for really hands-on engagement for 1 to 2 hours. Way more interesting than just putting up a billboard down I-5, right? And so that's how it started. And we are
kind of combining the sample model into the marketing sample model, where you're like handing people drinks in the grocery store, but you can't do that with alcohol. So it's a way around it.
Yeah. And it's really compelling because it combined, one is this experiential concept, which I was super familiar with and I know how to build, with two, this other business model on the backside that was super attractive, which is, not only are we getting product for free, in some cases we're getting paid to use it, which is crazy, right? So the margins are really good, and the founder just was really put together. He had this whole business plan, and everything was like dialed down to the last detail. And so we made a small investment and helped open the first liquor lab in New York, which was in Soho in 2017. I think we opened in 2018, and that operated until the pandemic, basically. And I came in, and my role was joined as an initial board member, and we helped, this founder's name was Owen Meyer, helped him get the business running, and I had started businesses and things before, so we really helped on a lot of the technical side and all those things. And then he created this experience, and it was amazing. Customers loved it, and the brands liked working with us. And then my expertise especially came in when we started expanding. And so we opened the second location, which was in Nashville, 2019. The timing was not great on that because just a few months later, obviously the pandemic shut the world down. But yeah, the goal was to jump in and then start growing this thing across the country. And it was, as an investor, that was the thesis. Great concept, experiential for the consumer, great returns for the liquor brands, and high return on capital because, a Topgolf costs 20 to 25 million to build, but a liquor lab only costs a couple $100,000 to build. So it made a lot of sense.
So, you go through COVID as a business, and obviously it's hard on the hospitality, restaurant, food and beverage businesses as a whole.
Yep.
You ride your way through. How do you sort of rebuild as you go through it? How do you stay open? I mean, Nashville somewhat rebelled, which was good, but
a little bit. Well, yeah. Nashville somewhat rebelled. However, we got a double whammy because if you recall, on Christmas Day, was it 2020 or 2021? Christmas Day, there was a bombing in Nashville.
Yeah, I do remember. I was actually just talking about this.
So we were right there. In fact, the building that we're in on 2nd Avenue there was the first building. There was a bunch of buildings that actually were condemned and had to be torn down and rebuilt. We were right next to it. So we were impacted, and the street was closed and the front of the building was blown out. But luckily we didn't have the entire building come down. So even when the world was reopening, we actually were still closed for like another year because of the bombing.
Yeah, I want to anchor it just because he's a good friend. Stuart, guys, at Explore Nash. If anyone's a tourist or anyone goes to Nashville, I recommend doing the Explore Nash tour, the walking tour of downtown Nashville, but it's part of what they cover down there. It's the bombing that went off down there. But anyway, go ahead, Aaron. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to plug that for everyone just because they do such a good job.
They're awesome. Yeah. So yeah, one of the ways that we survived through this period of time was teaching online classes. And so, as you probably all remember, everybody and their brother was Googling, Zoom happy hour and Zoom group events and team building activities and parties and stuff. And so we built a temporary business doing online cocktail classes where people would go get their ingredients and stuff. And then we would do a class where people would be sitting in their kitchens and we would teach a class. And so that got us through a couple of years until we could actually reopen. And I guess it was ultimately 2023 that we reopened.
In the same location, correct?
Same location. And then we actually, at the same time coming out of COVID, we had identified a location in Louisville that we were going to open. We were able to hang on to it and then actually open that as well in 2023. So and at the same time, because New York was so strict and we were having a lot of challenges there, we ended up closing the New York location. And so kind of coming out, now we're on the other side of the pandemic. We have 2 locations reopened, one in Nashville, one in Louisville, and that's what we still have today.
I mean, the Nashville location is, talk about real estate that is going through the roof and how many honky tonks have gone up in restaurants. I mean, that's part of the reason I spent so much time there the last 2 decades is also being in the building of restaurants and restaurant equipment, supplies, business, including food, all the way down to paper bags and paper towels and plastics, guys. So, but one of the things is first the flood wipes everything out. Nashville needs to be rebuilt. So a lot of opportunity there. Nashville, just so everyone knows, that's where it really came onto my radar. Then the honky tonks, then as artists have made more money in country music, and I would say come to an equal parallel as other artists. Well, Nashville's music city, guys. That means all music. Everyone always tells me, don't just say country music, Justin. Okay, I got it. You guys, yeah, I'm going to tell you guys this. My parents are in the horse business. My parents used to sell horses in Nashville. I used to go there and stuff little rocks and Coke bottles downtown when Luke Bryan's was still a bank and they used to cash in money there. I know all about what Nashville used to be, guys. I used to be there when it was a dirt town with like 3 honky tonks and Alan Jackson's was one of them. Maybe. There was nothing down there. Yeah, now there's a lot. And Jelly Roll has one. I'm just like, You can't, Morgan, all those guys.
Bon Jovi. So
Yeah,
it's
Bon
not just
Jovi.
country.
Yeah.
We're investors in that concept as well. The JBJ Roadhouse.
Yeah, we went. I was in there. I hadn't been there since it's been open, but we did go in there, Jennifer and I, while we were there running around this past week. I I think it's a great business model. I just have to be honest. And what Nashville has done as a city, allowing Airbnb eventually, because like back in the day, they didn't even allow Airbnbs. It was only hotels, so that restricted the city's ability to get people in. But what it did is it gave it time for hotels to plant root, for the Gulch to be redeveloped, sort of get a foothold and allow construction and real estate redevelopment companies to come into town, get a foothold, allow the regulations to catch up, and then sort of release everything on. And even now, still the infrastructure, the roads, the parking, it's still a nightmare. But I will tell you this, I agree with the investment. It's where I would put my money if I had it right now in that capacity, if I was in that business. Honky tonks, food Nashville, and beverage, restaurants in Nashville, So
it's amazing how it's grown. I mean, I'd say the two biggest concentrations of concepts like this that we invest in are Las Vegas and really Nashville. I mean,
yeah.
I can't think of any one of our companies that, if they're not already, we're not planning on some sort of opening in Nashville for everything. And so, one of the things that drove us there, it's like there's a huge amount of tourism. There's a great consolidation now of talent in the hospitality industry. And, there's something like 30 to 35,000 bachelorette parties a year.
Yeah.
So it's the number one destination for bachelorette parties. Bachelor parties is still Las Vegas. So we're working on those. But, we do, and that's what is one of the great things about Liquor Lab is we do awesome private events and private classes for groups of anywhere from, 12 to 40 people. And we do custom menus, and we'll do, come in with your bachelorette party and learn how to make 3 cocktails before you go out on the town. And, we'll do whatever drinks you want. We'll make custom ones for the bride, for whatever. And so that's a great part of our business.
Well, and I think it is the way a lot of food is going. I mean, it's Benihana's is there, just no one was able to replicate it in any way in any other industry, or thought about maybe replicating it until what we're talking about here, where it's actually, you're a part of the entire experience, right? That's where, from the minute the drink's made to the thing to being in Nashville itself. So it's not only are you doing these things, but Nashville is about food and alcohol and music, and now you're immersing yourself in it through Liquor Lab. Now you're a part of what it takes to make the drinks there or whatever. I mean, it's incredible. I don't even know, like, it still blows my mind how many tour companies there are with people dancing on buses. Like, that is like not a business model that I really thought would be long-term sustainable, because I just didn't see like how many people would really want to do it, but they do. It's an incredible thing. It's an incredible business model, so I like it. Let's talk about, where does this go? Cities. How do you pinpoint a good city? How do you sort of now figure out growth strategy for this? You guys are in this experiential space. John Bon Jovi. I mean, that was no small task. I'm sort of fascinated how it like hooks around another building, the Merchant Building, but that's a whole other thing.
But yeah, Josh Joseph at Big Plan Holdings is really the leader there. He made that whole thing happen and is an incredible developer. We just get to be, along for the ride as partners. But I can tell you, building that size in the middle of downtown is no small feat.
Yeah, and it's hooked around another building. So, and I've been in building restaurants and putting restaurants into skyscrapers and hoods and all sorts of blowing not the right direction into a neighbor. And I'm not totally, but that's an interesting endeavor. I would say that for the most part, we're seeing honky tonks or this type of entertainment in Nashville grow any direction it can. And the Bridgestone being right there, arena, that's a whole other thing. So there's a lot of strategy there. And Vegas is no different with their sports also. And Nashville's doing the same thing. They're really integrating the sports into the part of that experience. So
100%. It's been really interesting. So I actually lived in Vegas for 2 years before I moved back to here to Sacramento. And the shift to, the Raiders coming to town, the growth of the Golden Knights, the new baseball stadium, there's really been this interesting shift to sports as an anchor there. And I think that's just going to grow as, more and more entertainment is going to streaming. Obviously, the only things we really watch live anymore are like sports and news. And so much value has come around sports as a media property. And you've seen that with valuations of sports teams, with valuations of the media rights, and more people willing to travel for games, right? So if you, heaven forbid you have to fly out on a Vegas on a Sunday evening after a Raiders game, because you show up to the airport and there's like just a sea of, orange jerseys if it was a Denver game or something, because people will all fly into town for the weekend, go to Vegas, and then go to the game. 100%. And it's really cool.
Well, and I'm going to emphasize this too for the audience as well, is what we've seen. Well, one, in general, are generationally, at least generationally, I'm in my 40s, we're more active. I wouldn't say everyone, but there's a lot more activity than before in terms of being outdoors. A lot of it has to do with these basketball social clubs, pickleball, Top Golf. Like, we're taking things and we're making activity part of the experience, and it's not just a sit-down thing. It's not just a non-active thing. Also, food has become mobile. People are walking more in cities like Nashville, Louisville, Denver, where people are moving as they eat. So there's that. The other part that I think is important that's going on is that in terms of sports is CrossFit, Ironman, Spartan races, the pickleballs. We're now able to do these things well into our later years, 60s, 70s. So what does that mean, guys? Well, it means that we're more likely to watch it on TV. I'm even talking about throwing the sandbag cornhole. Like, I don't totally understand it, but it is kind of a sport. And so I get it. And so that's becoming a thing. We've seen Formula One take off. So I agree with you. The sports, the value on the TV, the number of channels, the number of sports that we can also play into our years, as well as the traditional sports that, because we've aged better, we've taken better care of ourselves, we can now play in our latter years for whatever reason. I would say mobility and just movement is a key part of that. But yeah. This is only going to grow, right? This whole experiential thing in general, we as humans want more of that. We want more of the sports in terms of going to Vegas and not only going to gamble, but having the sports experience and whatever. So is it allure? Yeah, guys, it's a better honey trap. So if you're in one of these markets or growing in one of these markets, you're going to have a better chance. And you could have the greatest ideas in the world. I keep telling restaurateurs and whatever, what do we need to do? Well, if you really want to take a risk and you really want to do something, you've got to go to a place. There's a reason my Italian relatives and my grandparents came over to this country, right? Because there's greater opportunity here. So you have to be willing to move to greater opportunity. Also, if you're in a restaurant doing something in the middle of nowhere, Indiana, yeah, you can do well there. Yeah, you could possibly grow it into chains and whatever. But are you going to have a better opportunity to grow and learn and be around other entrepreneurs who are growing in those two spaces? Yeah. Is it going to be a little more expensive? Yeah, but you're paying for the lessons.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great, I actually just read about this in a book, this new book by Ezra Klein called Abundance, talking about the value of cities and how the feedback loops of like talent and learning and opportunities and stuff in cities is just so much greater, where there's a study on, basically economic mobility of moving to a city versus staying remote is pretty astronomical.
Yeah, I love this. So where do you go from here ultimately? Like, you have a lot of things going on, both individually as a business or as businesses. I think we've touched upon a space that sort of you're talking about where there's longevity in the business. It's enduring. But it's also starting to get that technology involved in it, Topgolf would be kind of an example. There's gamifying of it in a way that's what golf is, but golf's gamifying it takes forever, and it doesn't really keep a score, and it's not in everyone's face, so it's not like the competitiveness is kind of there, but you're being more competitive with the stick in your hand than the individuals around you.
We used to get in trouble because Eric would get in trouble because he would say golf is a 4-hour walk with a 20-minute game.
Yes.
And our golf friends didn't like that, but it's,
no, and as an entrepreneur,
that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, as an entrepreneur, I play golf. I grew up in golf. My parents instilled it in me as a business practice. It's a hard thing for me because it is so much downtime that someone who values time more than money and afforded that luxury. It's just it's not an efficient way of my time and my growth and trying to grow the world around me. Weirdly, might like it, but yeah, just for that reason, it takes too long.
Yeah. Well, it's good to get out there. So,
yes, I love it.
Where are we going? So where's Liquor Lab going? I mean, so right now we've got these 2 locations, Nashville and Louisville. We've got a great team, and we bring in expert bartenders from some of the best bars around town to come teach classes. And so we say, you'll see a bartender out at some of the best cocktail bars and get drinks from them. And then you come to Liquor Lab and you get to actually talk to them and learn from them how to make those drinks, which is really cool. And it's the same thesis of basically taking something that's aspirational and cool and timeless, which is this art of making mixed drinks, making cocktails. And the bartenders, I always say, is like they're like rock stars, right? I mean, they're these almost mythical creatures in our culture that are just super like cooler than cool and larger than life. And so to actually get to be behind the bar yourself and be the star for an evening, learn how to make some drinks and actually interact with and learn from these star bartenders is democratizing this kind of aspirational cocktail experience, right? And people look at, okay, I want to make drinks at home, but you got to go buy 100 bottles and have one of everything, and you got to have all the tools and stock your bar. And like, yeah, sure, some of us do that if we're total nerds, but to get started, it's a lot easier to just show up and say, oh, there's all the tools are in front of me. We've got the ingredients. All you have to do is follow instructions, have a great time, and then enjoy what you made. And so it's kind of like Topgolf in that way, where we break down the barriers, don't make you spend $1,000 before you can even get started. And we like to, I want to be the first place where you actually get introduced to the art and the joy of making cocktails. And then hopefully, people go home and experience it and learn on their own. And then they come back and join us for master classes and try all the different menus and different types of drinks. And, I never want to encourage over consumption, right? But I think, making a nice craft cocktail is a thoughtful thing when enjoyed in moderation. And so,
I think there's probably a greater appreciation for it as well when you do it yourself, for sure.
100%. And when you're taking the time to make, a crafted drink that's going to take some steps and is made, with care, it's also harder to it's not like you're pounding, 12 beers back to back because you just have to crack open the can, right? And so it's sort of like forced moderation in a way. But as far as where we're going, I mean, the goal right now is to make our 2 locations as successful and profitable as possible, and then expand to cities around the country. We've got our eyes on Texas. I've had a lot of experience building in Dallas and Austin and San Antonio. We're looking at Atlanta, Charleston, Charlotte, Indianapolis, Chicago. So we're comfortable kind of in the middle. Some of the bigger and second tier cities are in the middle of the country, and eventually I'd like to be on the West Coast. But I can also tell you it's hard. If any of you have opened a restaurant in California, you know how hard it is to get a liquor license, to build, to spend 3 times the amount of money. And so I think for now we're looking at scaling closer to home and seeing where that takes us.
I like this a lot. Let's talk a little bit about, let's explain venture capital a little bit to the group, to the audience, just because I don't think I anchored it at the beginning and I don't generally talk about it, but let's anchor it in general, just what it is, how it works, how structures are set up, what the governance looks like, all of that type of stuff. for anyone who might be interested, because I think I get a lot of questions about investing and what this, that, or other thing, but this is a very viable option if you have the right business or fit into what the venture capitalists are investing in. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it totally. And it's also true that like not every business is a fit for venture capital, right? And you, like, I would actually suggest if it's possible to build and grow your business without taking on outside investors, then you should do it. Unless you find great people who are also going to not just give you money, but actually help you grow as a person and as a business. But, I wouldn't say like everyone needs to jump and try to go find investors. The basic theory is for, taking on outside capital is, you're giving up a piece of the pie, you're giving up a piece of ownership for money, but the theory is that that'll help make the pie much, much bigger. And so even though you've got a smaller piece, you're going to make more money. And that happens. You can see how it happens in like, software and tech companies where, you'll sell 25% of the business, but then with that $1 million or $5 million or whatever it's going to be, you can scale the business into the millions or the billions, right? Because with software, it's like you can build it once and sell it, 1 million times. And, if you translate that to the world of hospitality, it's like, okay, I need to build a restaurant. A lot of people will get a loan, SBA loan or something, but you oftentimes need equity investors also, or sometimes you only take equity investors. And the idea is you sell a chunk of your business, so some percentage, you get the money, and then if you're successful, you either just share that percentage of your profits with your investor on an ongoing basis because you just have shared ownership, or in some cases it's more structured like a loan or something where they'll make their money back first. So as you start to make profit, you'll pay the investors back, and then either they'll go away once they make their money back plus some set return, or sometimes once they get their capital back, then they'll continue participating, but at a smaller rate. So there's different ways to structure it. It's all, honestly, at the end of the day, it just comes down to allocating risk, right? Who's taking on how much risk and how much are they getting compensated for it?
Absolutely. Anything oh no, go ahead.
There's different, like I said, we've participated in a lot of different structures. In most of our investments, when we talk about things like Liquor Lab or like Topgolf or whatever, we're putting in money to buy in and own a piece of the business. In some cases, it's 20%. In some cases, it's more than half, and we're in control. But the goal is to build that together as a long-term investment. We're not trying to make our money back tomorrow. We're trying to build something really valuable. So my goal would be to take Liquor Lab, grow it into a $50 million business, and ultimately, sell it to the right owner someday. And then all of the investors who came in with us, and as well as our capital and the team, the employees and the team that's running it, get to share in that outcome when we sell the business.
I like it a lot. Louisville, comparative to Nashville, they're two different markets. Can you just touch upon that a little bit? Is the model the same? Do you see a difference? And when you talk about Dallas, obviously, that's a good market. Mm-hmm. I know quite a bit of the SMU area just from having a former stepdaughter go there. Mm-hmm. But let's talk about like that, dealing with that a little bit, because the traffic's a little bit different, the population, the tourism, but you're going in there anyway. It was your second choice.
Yeah, I mean, Nashville was our first choice because of just the growth in the city, the tourism, the types of tourism that we talked about. But it's expensive. I mean, especially we're off of 2nd Avenue, and we have a very valuable and expensive location, and so that requires a lot of volume to be profitable. And the theory is that there's enough business there to make us very successful, and do classes. I'll do classes all week and lots of private events, and that's the goal is tapping into that huge amount of both local and tourism business there. With Louisville, we were looking for another location not too far from Nashville, because we don't want to spread our team too thin as we're still building and learning this business. And Louisville is another big spirits spirits business. There's the huge whiskey business in town, as you probably know. And they get, I think, the second most spirits related tourism in the country. And after like the Tennessee Whiskey Trail. But the cost of real estate and cost of operating is actually a lot less than in Nashville. And so we were able to find a nice space that was much more accessible in terms of rent. And it's smaller. In Nashville, we operate 3 classrooms. Louisville, we have 1 classroom, but it's a great space. We're in a great location in Nulu Market. And it's definitely more local business, I would say. There's some tourism, and we have some relationships with local tourism companies. And it's been an interesting experiment. I'm actually really interested in looking at some of smaller cities and towns where the cost of rent is way cheaper than in a big city like Nashville, but there's still a lot of people there, and there's people need stuff to do, right? Like I think about Sacramento, and I think we would kill it in Sacramento because there's a ton of people here. There's a great young population, and we need more stuff to do. In Nashville, there's a ton of competition. New York City, infinite competition, right? But in a smaller city, there's a little bit less competition for stuff to do, and so it's a little easier to get attention.
Yeah, and I think there's a lack in a lot of cities in that experiential. It's probably why Topgolf does so well in some of those places, well, Denver being one of them, is that there's just not an experience level on that level. Are there places you can make your own wine or your own cheese or your own things? Yes, there are those places here in Denver for sure, but there isn't that elevated experience. Topgolf is definitely one of them. But it's on a different level. This is what we're talking about here. It's on a different level. It adds, I don't know, it adds an emotion to it. You're doing it with friends and family also. You're building this moment with them, or whether it's a bachelorette party, or it's just a tour, or it's just a class just to go do something with someone in your house. I think any of it is pretty unique, and I agree. I think we're going to see more and more like this, particularly as we have more and more time. AI is definitely making things more efficient. I, as an entrepreneur, do a lot with AI that I used to need a lot of humans around me to do. So, and that gives me a lot more time to do things like that for sure. So, Aaron, anything that I missed, anything that you want to talk about before we get off?
No, it's been fun. I love hospitality and food and beverage, and creating, primarily as a fan and consumer myself, right, of great restaurants and experiences and drinks. I love getting to work in and talk about this stuff. And it's really cool that you've got this audience and this podcast focused on this, this industry and this thing that so many of us love to do. So it's been a joy. And I would just say, come to Nashville, come visit us at Liquor Lab. And then also shout out to, we have some other businesses, Play Social on 2nd, and the Listening Room Cafe, and JBJ's Roadhouse, all awesome teams and experiences, and would love to host you for a class at Liquor Lab.
Yeah, I definitely really love the John Bon Jovi. That's big too. I like it. It's big. Yeah, it's a big venture. So, but in Nashville, you want square footage really matters. More feet, especially how busy it gets there in the summer. Liquor, musicians, food. It's crazy. It's already getting that way. It was pretty crowded there on Friday. While we were there. So,
Nashville's hot.
Yeah, it's a good market to be in. Aaron, you personally, this is going to be my last question. Role models, mentors, individuals that sort of invested in you or spend time with you so that you could have the success that you have today, so you could help others be successful. I think that's important. The success you have today leads to other success.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I got really lucky. They say the best thing you can do in life is pick your parents well. And I picked really good parents. And so they're, my whole family's amazing. My grandparents. And so that I got lucky with that. But I also have had mentors along the way, like Eric, my partner, Eric Anderson, who picked me out, when I was 22, and has basically taught me everything I know since then. I would not be where I am or who I am today without him. And And then there's other people too. I went to this great school, Whitworth University in Spokane, and had a lot of professors and now mentors from there. Like Bill Robinson is one in particular who was president and is a great leader and author on leadership that I've learned a ton from. And then all the people we get to invest in, I mean, the founders and entrepreneurs that I get to work with and, advise. I mean, I guarantee you I've learned more from them than they've learned from me along the way. Part of my value is just honestly absorbing what they teach me and then going and sharing it with the others. And so I'm really just like a node in a network that are they teaching each other through me. I just get to absorb all of it.
Yeah, that's what I tell everyone. You're an entrepreneur. Yeah, I don't know if there was an original idea in here. I think I just, over the years, between growing up in an entrepreneurial family, reading books, going to good schools, investing in my education continuously, doing this podcast, like it's again, same thing. This podcast became more learning from everyone else than me trying to teach everyone. So, I mean, there's been a lot of that as well. And then I would say that, and people ask this all the time, CEO, leadership, building businesses. When you reverse it and it is a servitude thing where in business, I'm growing it, but I have to learn everything I need about the business to grow it. That means I'm in the service of those in the business. I need to extract as much knowledge from them as possible at the same time while growing my knowledge forward in what the business doesn't know. And that's a really important thing, guys, is everyone always asks me, like, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? When I learned that the first thing that I had to do and the most important thing above others is grow myself, and especially in my ability to grow others, and then go back and grow those to grow the business. So I didn't have to do everything. And I didn't have to be the end all be all. And at the end, you also learn you're not the only customer. Like you have to have that as well. And as entrepreneurs, we often forget it. We like what we like, or we become, I'm going to use this example, and I just dealt with it in Nashville, and I'm just going to say it. Because something is in your family and everyone loves it and it's really, really, really good to everyone in your family, doesn't always mean it's really good. It means it's really comfortable, anchored by a really great emotional experience. And we do this in food a lot. And so it can always be better. Don't get hooked on the family's recipe, and don't get discouraged because the recipe to everyone else doesn't have the same impact as it does in your family. Okay. So the reason I'm going to say this is because I think it's important for this episode. We often quit at that point, but the reason we quit is because we think the recipe sucks and that's the end of it. It's the constant trying to make the recipe better that matters. Your family gave you a foundation. It's what you do when you build it. It's no different than your education. It's a foundation. What are you going to do with it? Your family can give you exposure, experience to the world. You're either going to take it for granted and be in your phone, or you're going to go when you're around the world and learn from it. Those are two ways. Can you learn from your phone? Yes. But can you also learn from the world around you when you're not anywhere near that you've normally been? Yes. So are those things important, what I just said? Yeah, but as an entrepreneur, well-roundedness, having the ability to look at our situations, weigh our options, exposure, experience, education, and I'm going a little bit down multiple paths here. I apologize. But the reason I want to say this to you guys is we do all those things. We have all these things. Life can seem like chaotic as entrepreneurs, but when we ground it in the growing of others and growing them in our businesses and allowing them to grow in our businesses, they do a lot better. That doesn't mean we don't have standards and we don't hold them accountable and we don't have processes and procedures and KPIs in place, key performance indicators for the audience. Anyway, that's like goals that you want to achieve and you constantly are checking them. But those things matter because your business matters by which you do it. So I may not be the greatest person as an entrepreneur to organize things, as we discussed earlier, but I better build a team around me. And in that team, there better be someone that's a good organizer.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Totally. It's like, that's the thing is, as a leader, my job is to build teams and put the best people in place that know how to do everything. right? I can't do all these things. I'm not a bartender by trade. I'm a huge fan of bartenders and I'm an enthusiast, but I think that just makes me better at empowering them to do what they do best, right?
And so many entrepreneurs don't get out of that I'm the chef and thinking to that level where no, you're more than a chef now. You need to, I know it's your restaurant, it's your name on it maybe, but maybe you don't need to be making the recipes anymore or designing the menus. That's okay. So, but that's a big step and we have to grow and it means letting go of something, but businesses are like children. It's okay to let others grow them, so. Aaron, anything on I just said before we wrap up here?
No, I would just say read a lot. I've, deep thinking and learning is a substitute for pure experience. And so, I got to where I am quickly because I learned from others, but I also spent a lot of time studying and reading books. And I would highly suggest anybody that's looking to invest in themselves, that pays the biggest dividends. And I'd spend time every day learning from somebody, whether dead or alive.
Yeah, tough question. I know I said my last one, but any book in particular that you found that you recommend more than others?
Oof. Well, for this audience, you guys have probably read it, but Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara I just read that last year and I've given it to all my team members. It's awesome.
Yeah, 100%.
Will built 11 Madison and really, really good.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's some, I'm going to butcher his name, Bestanich. There's him and his mom's Lydia, Italian food out of New York City, but they have some good books out there in hospitality. But I will agree with you, Unreasonable Hospitality is one of the top books I would say that I've read recently, more recent books. I do a lot of reading too. And yeah, I would say people don't read the books they should read even when they're in the industry. I always find that interesting as well. I can't read a fiction book anymore. I'm ruined. I can only read books that grow me. So
I've come back around. I spent years on just nonfiction, but the last couple of years I've tried to get my creative juices flowing more. And I've actually got a lot more into fiction and started a book club with my brother and some friends. And that's really helped a lot. But I think
that's a good idea.
I think a good mix is important. You gotta have your creative juices and your imagination stimulated, and you gotta pour into learning as well.
I agree. Where can they find you online? Where can they find the businesses online? Where can they find all of it? Social media. I'll just let you have it.
Yeah, totally. Find us at Liquor Lab on Instagram. It's probably the best place. If you want to follow my journey, you can find me at Aaron.Vaccaro. I don't post a lot, but I'll try. And yeah, would love to see you in a class in Nashville.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you guys for listening in. I appreciate all of you guys. Like, share, comment on the episodes. That's how they get out there. We all understand the algorithms, guys. We're all entrepreneurs. We're trying to beat them and play with them every day in our businesses. So we all know how they work. If you like the episode, if you're a fan of the entrepreneur on the episode, the best thing you can do is share, like, comment on the episode. That's how you can help. Go to the businesses. That's even greater help. Order the food. In this case, take a class. A lot of the audience here, a lot of you entrepreneurs are double dippers. You listen to this show to be entrepreneurs, but I know a lot of you, because we're so Nashville heavy and New York City heavy, that a lot of you go there and visit the restaurants there as well as entrepreneurs to get ideas and meet the entrepreneurs and network. So here's another one for you guys. Definitely go try all of them. I recommend John Bon Jovi as well, just to see what growth can do, what investment growth can do. If I were in the food and beverage and restaurant game, and I were growing something in that way, and that were my field, that's what I would do. Guys, I'm just more in the manufacturing, mass production, volumes of food, need franchises for central production. So I work in big volumes, but if I'm a little entrepreneur, I'm building my restaurant concept, I'm looking for my next place to go. We talked about cities. We also talked about it's okay to build something and ask for investors, and I'm going to drop a plug here. And I was just in Kansas City. I've tried to visit as many food entrepreneurs as I could in 10 days in Kansas City, St. Louis, Cleveland, Louisville, Nashville, Chattanooga, and just some that have been on the show, some that haven't been on the show, just trying to get out there and meet as much people, see what's going on. I know a lot of hardship, rising prices. But one of the things that I will say, guys, that's really cool about all of you and all of you guys and what you're going through is that you're getting more creative and you're thinking about your businesses differently. And in Kansas City, Chicken and Waffle, he's been on the show 4 times. His family also owns Jerusalem Cafe, which has now transitioned from traditional 9 restaurants closed down to 1, traditional dining, Palestinian style food, Israeli style, that part of the world food. They're Palestinian Americans. But now they've switched to more like the chicken and waffle concept of a quick service, and the business is growing. So now a brother runs it. Dennis is still running chicken and waffle, and they have an opportunity to go to the Power and Light District and build something, down there in the Power and Light District in Kansas City is where the downtown arena is, the T-Mobile Arena. It's the growing district. There's the Cordish Group, which is in there investing in the real estate. That's the type of things we're talking about. So I want to say this for you guys. One of the things the brothers realized is if they took the top 8 things on each of their menu and they combined it together and then did a combination menu of both their concepts and another 8 and opened a restaurant and made it experiential with non-alcoholic mocktails, drinks and stuff like that, an alternative to all the rest of the bars, that it would gain traction. So they're the alternate for the crowd that doesn't go to all the events and drink, to the crowd that goes to the events and wants a different type of food other than barbecue or pizza downtown, right? But it's an experiential thing, guys. It's beyond just a chicken and waffle. It's beyond now just Jerusalem Cafe. They're creating it where you get the best of both worlds, plus 8 items on a menu that are sort of cool combinations of each one you wouldn't get, plus kombucha, plus mocktails, plus live music at this place, all before you go into the arena. So why am I emphasizing this? Because it goes back to what we're talking about. If you're going to do it as a business, as an entrepreneur, and you're starting to get a footing as it, and a lot of you are like, let's franchise, let's do this, let's do this. What you're looking at is what's worked traditionally for businesses. You're looking in the rear view, and does franchising still work? Did it work for Crumble and all these companies? Yes, but fast franchising is also bad because you don't totally flush out your market. Crumble is only cookies, guys. Would they have done a lot better with more to offer? Maybe. Would they have more longevity, endurance if they had more? Because now they're kind of a trend. So that's what I'm talking about. How do we have longevity? Well, you got to keep thinking, because one business is doing well, do not be afraid to expand into others. And in this case, we just talked to an investor who in his own investments is diversifying across what he's doing in hospitality, John Bon Jovi, etc., not just the core businesses, right? So we talked about Living Room Cafe, Tailspin Reality Labs, One Hope, Toca Football, just to name a few for everyone. So thank you for your time, Aaron. I know we went over. You're a plethora of information. I just want to emphasize Liquor Lab for everyone, WestRiver Group. You guys want to expand.
If you have, I guess the last, on the very last note, if you are an entrepreneur looking for investors to scale a hospitality concept, then you can find us at WestRiver, also at WRJ.VC.
Yeah, I don't want to overwhelm you guys either, because I know how that goes. But you're welcome. I love you guys in the audience. Everyone, again, like, share, comment. Thank you for letting me ramble. Thank you for letting me close off. Again, guys, invest in humans. They'll grow your business. If you want investors to come into your business, yes, financials matter. We just heard it. But you have to raise the level of what you're doing. It's not just another cookie shop. You got to have a better than just what everyone else is doing cookie shop. And a good recipe is only an entry point to play the game, guys. So love you guys. I appreciate you guys. We're out.